Hey, just want to welcome everybody to Save World, Make Art. And welcome, this is episode 8. And I am Eugene Clark along with my illustrious master artist host, Mr. Matt Faulkner. I was going to do a drum roll.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Matt Faulkner, how are you today?
I'm doing good. And I'm looking at the artwork behind you there. That's beautiful.
Yes, thank you. I picked a different background for today's episode so that as we're talking about sketchbooks and drawing, I can point over to this little guy and maybe, point out a couple ideas of how it might relate.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Will, let's start talking sketchbooks. Or
let's talk sketchbooks. So, the last time that we were on our episode 7, we were really focusing on how sketchbooks can become a place where artists can make infinite, quote unquote, mistakes, and that it's okay. It's okay to do that. And then I think we tried to emphasize that they're not really mistakes. They're happy accidents that really teach us a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of these happy accidents or things that may not necessarily be exactly the way you want them, what would you say to people when that occurs in their book? Would you say, hey, throw it out? Or would you say, harness that energy?
Well, definitely, there is a real desire to invest in, I made a mistake, nobody can ever see this.
Right.
And I know that's why, I didn't want people to see what I'd done. And I still don't. I don't want people to open up my sketchbook and go to the scribble page, or the crappy drawing page. But I think that's why a sketchbook has covers, because we don't have to show them to people. For me, a sketchbook has become, it's a little bit difficult for me I'm actually scrolling back through the videos of me trying to remember exactly what it was like when I was at that place where I was afraid people would see mistakes. Because at this point, I really don't care,
Yeah.
But it wasn't that long ago that I was still that way. And it was when I started hanging around with my teacher and friend, Glenn Michaels, that he was just, yeah, you got to keep a constant sketchbook, which I really haven't done as much as I should lately, if at all, for a while. But so that issue of, is a sketchbook a place to make mistakes? Yeah, it's why even call them mistakes?
Well, we're confronted right now with this digital realm, which I know you're 2 feet head first working with your digital tablet, creating work that up till now for you was done in a traditional manner and then digitized. And now here you are, start to finish, from beginning to end, everything from your ideas to your thumbnails to your finished artwork. It's all done digitally. And I know you just said, hey, I haven't really been working on my sketchbook the way I should. You're thinking physical sketchbook. I'm thinking digital sketchbook right now. I had the good fortune a number of years ago to come up with a pitch for a class that ended up not only being offered, but it ran. And it was called Digital Figure Drawing. And what we did is we set it up so that students knew they were going to do all of their drawing digitally on a digital tablet, and that we weren't going to use one stitch paper the entire semester. Mm-hmm. And we were going to work from the live model, which more often when you work digitally, up till now, people have not felt, oh, I'm going to get my pad out and do my sketches from the model. We do that on our newsprint. So this class was set up to provide that opportunity for the art students that, really felt that would be something, that would benefit them. What are your thoughts about this digital as opposed to, tactile?
Well, when it first started to become a big deal, it was when I was actually teaching at the college you and I both taught at, the College for Creative Studies in Detroit. And I remember, students were, I was saying, no, you don't do things digitally. You have to do things traditionally. If you're going to learn anything, you have to paint with paint. Um, I'm not so sure that I would say that anymore. Um, of course, you can use a digital sketchbook. If that is what you have at hand, use that. For
Right.
me personally, um, the tactile sense of holding a pencil that is, graphite and got wood, you know, and sharpening that pencil and the paper and the feeling of a sketchbook in my hand, that's what comes naturally to me because that's what naturally came to me as a kid. That's so if you got an iPad when you were a kid, then absolutely use it. You know that when we start talking about painting and color, I'll have some other things to say about that in terms of understanding color that I don't think can happen in quite the same way that with a digital palette. But as far as drawing is concerned, um, there are some aspects to it too, though, Eugene. I mean, since you know what I'm talking about, the stylus that we use dragged across a piece of the surface of an iPad is a completely different experience than a pencil being dragged across a piece of paper. And it's not as satisfying to me. Like I said before, there are people, probably two generations now since this, back in the early 2000s and last part of the last millennia, where there are people who that this is all they've done is use a cursor or a stylus, not a pencil.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm not going to get in anybody's way. Go ahead and do that, but um, if you wanted to do it exactly the way that I do it, you would have to use a sketchbook.
Yeah.
But that
Well,
doesn't mean that, so.
I think too, in order, like if we say, hey, Matt Faulkner, watercolor with pencil and ink, um, and then you show your digital version of that, you have a real life experience with the tactile material to bring to how you now digitally are going to handle that and want it to look as an end result.
Right.
How can you make the end result appear the way that this watercolor thing is supposed to look if you haven't ever picked up the actual watercolors or the actual charcoal and given that a whirl? So I think there is some validity to needing to maintain this real feel tactile element, which is the actual material, and then find a way to replicate that with your digital tools. Um, However, I used to think that these uh, younger art students of this current generation and maybe one generation behind, I used to think that, oh, these guys, they grew up with these tools, therefore they're going to lean more towards them than the physical. And I'm kind of finding a little bit of both, like there's still a group of young artists that don't have a lot of digital experience.
Mm.
And that was a little alarming to me because I thought, okay, it's one thing for you and I to have to play catch up because there was never a computer class in the school that I went to, which was CCS. So I'm going to have to teach myself everything. But that's not the case for these young artists. They have access to all these digital courses. Why would they not be using this stuff the way you are? So that's an interesting, question to pose when we're thinking about
Well,
digital versus.
don't you think it's the tactile stuff? Listen, one of the things this is a really good point. I mean, that you're bringing up because like why you told me this before that there are now, see, I'm thinking this is like over the past 5 to 10 years. My teaching, I haven't been in a classroom teaching since like 2012, 2000, maybe 2010. So I've in that interim, there's a whole bunch of changes. That's been almost 10 years, or more than 10 years. So you've been teaching some through that whole period. So you're seeing a transformation that I haven't necessarily seen. So you're starting to see these people who are like, either because they can't get a hold of a pad, I mean, an electronic pad, or because by choice, right?
Right.
They don't want to.
Yeah,
See, that's different.
I think there's some resistance. Part of what I find is fascinating too is, I don't teach digital classes currently. So everything that I teach, we're using the tactile materials. Although I give students the option to use digital tools if they have them and they're available and they would like to do that. So some students really gravitate towards that. But, just in small talk, when we're talking about some of their classes where they're working on the computer a lot. And I'm talking animation and video game design students who, their world is going to have to be filled with digital programs. And what I find out is that in their courses, a lot of times when I say, hey, so did the teacher, go through and teach you this program? And 9 times out of 10, it's no, they give me the assignment. And then I have to go and teach myself the program and how to do it. Well, I think that poses a bigger gap that forms between students gravitating and shying away.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I can see Molly behind me on the kitchen table. That's what
Hi, Molly.
okay. Well, when I was, yes, when I was back in 2000, I remember, and before that, they were actually providing courses in like Photoshop, right? But I'm
Right.
guessing now that they're just assuming that students can go on YouTube and look at a YouTube channel video on how to use any of the other newer Illustrator kind of programs, and they'll figure it out themselves, which is really a shame. I mean, I have a whole rant about why, to me, what's really exciting, and I'll just make it brief, what's really exciting about these programs is the people who are developing the programs are doing the creative stuff. To me, I don't find the actually using of these tools as creative as people like to think it is.
Right. Right.
I mean, it is creative. People are using them and having fun and making, really bright, I was going to say derogatory, but they're making really potent stuff, and I like to look at it. Yet, to me, like I said, the really important creative stuff that's happening are the people who are at the computer places developing the software to try to give the person the feeling that they're using a brush when it's a piece of plastic dragged across a piece of glass.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
right now, see
Yes.
that's and I know that they're going to go further than that. They're going to try to really recreate this whole experience of mixing paint with a brush and having us have the feeling that digitally, like we're doing it. How they're going to do that, if we're going to have to like have a special glove and special glasses, and it's like, what the hell, why didn't you just mix paint and pick up a brush?
Oh
you
my
know
gosh.
so
Yes.
I still have those old rants in the back of the hard drive back here. I just think too that um, there's a whole pull away from being here now that the electronic world, the virtual world, is asking of us.
Yeah.
You've got to give over and adapt to the electronic life, which means more and more. For instance, in my business, it became hard. Last spring, I finished a book, and they were going to photograph it and digitize it. And the companies that used to do that don't do it so much anymore. There aren't as many companies. And, like, where are we going to go to
Yeah.
get this done? And it
Yeah.
required real search to try to find somebody who had a big enough camera, still did it, knew how to do it well. We went to one company, they did a bad job, and we had to go to another company just as the pandemic was starting to roll. So it was
Well, I
a
think
scary, yeah.
what you're saying reminds me of the fact that when I got married 20 years ago, one of the big presents I gave my wife during the holidays was a camera, but I'm not talking about a digital camera. This was a single lens reflex camera that was manual, and it took rolls of film. And myself having a background in photography, I felt very comfortable not only giving that to her, but I had access to dark rooms at CCS. She signed up for a class. She got to have some darkroom experience, we did together, and it was really fun to go through that whole process from the taking of the photos to producing them and manipulating them on the paper and seeing the end result. So I think, that's some of the things that I think of when I think of this changeover. The other thing is, I think that, when I'm trying to teach something like gesture, and one of the things about gesture is I get the students to hold their arms up, even on Zoom. And I talk about the movement in your shoulder, elbow, your wrist, and your fingers. So there's 4 movement components that need to go into your line. And then the students that are working digitally on this little tablet, they go, well, how do I do that on the tablet? Because they're watching me do this on a big piece of newsprint. And I'm going, like on a piece of paper like this, you can get large and in charge. So, there's that also, that understanding of you're confined to this small area. Now that even limits you more in terms of possibilities of your bringing your body movement into the making of the piece.
Yeah, I hear that. Like, so if we can keep talking about the piece behind you,
Yeah.
can you talk
Yeah.
about
So this
how you made
piece,
that?
sure. So this is a really thick printmaking paper. It's called Arches. That's the name of the company that makes it. And this
Is it cold
particular,
press, cold press, hot press?
yeah, it's a cold press. That means, or I'm sorry, it's a hot press, which is the smooth surface, right? The
Right.
hot press is smooth, cold press is a little bit
Lumpy.
rougher.
Yeah.
So this is a hot press surface. It's got a deckled edge to it. It's about 5 feet wide. And then the actual roll was about 80 feet in length. So what I would do is unroll it to about 7 feet, the length of a table, and cut it, and then clamp it down. And I did photo silk screen on top of charcoal drawing. So the charcoal drawing was done upright like this on a wall. And then I laid it down onto the table to manipulate the photo silk screen, which is all the way around the perimeter. But then some of the photo silk screen is actually on the drawing, like right here. And I used a transparent base in the ink so that the charcoal drawing would be shown through the photo image. And these are actual images of deconstructed buildings in downtown Detroit where I lived. And I was sort of being inspired by these beautiful interiors of what, if you were driving by, you'd just be like, oh, look, they're, tearing down some buildings over there. But for me as an artist, it was eye candy. And I enjoyed all these infrastructures that were coming out. And then I started equating it to my study of anatomy and our infrastructure, so I was like, hey, you know what? I want to find a way to bring photographically the interior of these buildings and combine it with these sort of idealized muscle forms, which is what I call them.
Yeah, it
So
looks almost
these
like
are not
floor.
from life. These are just imaginatively done. But I wanted to sort of not only pay tribute to these inanimate structures that at one time were well used and great parts of the community, and now they're just an eyesore, or they're just left to become dilapidated, almost become part of the fabric of the city, so to speak. We used to say, oh, that's where the bomb hit, right over there, because it looked like a bomb scene based on the fact that there were so many of these ongoing deconstructed buildings. And sorry to say, but it's still going on today. You can find this in the city of Detroit. As an artist growing up in Detroit, I really just latched onto that stuff. So I think that always kind of comes through in what I do. I love the feel, and rather than go, no, that's not right, I embrace it, and I'm like, okay, this is part of where I am and where I live, but it's also part of who I am, and there's history involved, Mr. Faulkner.
Well, I mean, those buildings too. And what's amazing to me about those buildings is the kind of community that was there, and then it just went someplace and it fell apart, you know, and the kind of money that was involved in building these uh, expensive homes, and they're one right after another. They're these big brick 3-story, you know, Victorian late 19th century beautiful things. And so yeah, it's beautiful. I thought that actually some of the drawing too was started to look like bulbs from a plant, you know, like
Ooh,
flower
I
bulbs.
like that.
But yeah, you can see that they have the tendons, and it's beautiful. So it's that's the charcoal. Did you seal the charcoal before you did the silk screen over them?
You know, I didn't. And
Did it
I,
smear a little bit?
you know, this drawing, I'm sure it's, I hate to say, but it's going on 25, 30 years old. So
Don't have
it's
to hate
been
that.
through, it's been rolled up and transported and hung, and
Yeah.
kids walking by and doing this and all kinds. So the charcoal's probably a little lighter, but the cool thing is I started with the vine and then I went in with the charcoal pencil.
Yeah.
So the charcoal pencil, I always tell students, because they don't necessarily want to use charcoal pencil, but it really solidifies. I mean,
Yes.
for this to be still being able to, make out what's there over that period of time, and I didn't spray it or anything. So it's pretty
Wow.
cool.
Yeah, and like the difference between the two, right? Vine to me is like it's almost like sculpting on the paper. It's so loose and you can push it all around, and it's kind of loosey goosey. It'll you look at it the wrong way and it'll move. But the charcoal pencil is almost like using a lead. And you get really defined marks, and so
Yeah, well,
um,
when we're talking about digital as opposed to sketchbook and the real materials, when we look at something like this and what you were talking about, it also makes me think how when I was doing some pieces for Art Prize in Grand Rapids, I used what they call wooden pallets that typically get tossed by, big box stores. Everything's delivered on a wooden pallet, and then the pallet just is thrown in a big pile on the back of the store. That's how I got them. They were being tossed, and I said at a hardware store, hey, can I use some of these to make an art piece? Yeah, take whatever you want. So I got 12 of them, and it's the thin wood with the slats, and I just painted right on that and did some portraits, and you can see through the spaces. And I found that to be really interesting challenge to paint on something like that. But at the same time, I was thinking, how would you digitally do something like this and then get it onto the wood? I mean, it would be
right.
such a completely different. I'm sure that there's a digital way to do it, but I'm so grateful that I didn't work that way for for something like this. So, those are the things that artists are confronted by. And I think that's where the real sketchbook, going back to what we started talking about, that's where the real sketchbook can have some validity. Like, one of the things I'll say to students to get them to not treat the sketchbook as so precious is I'll say, carry it with you wherever you go. Keep it in your backpack, take it to work with you, take it to, grandma's when she's making you dinner. And I said, also, throw it off the top of a building, run your car over it, you know, burn it, just do whatever it takes to explore what those things might do to influence you to be creative.
Yeah, I mean, to me too, Eugene, the issue and I know if we had people who worked exclusively in digital stuff, they'd be sitting here saying, oh, you're wrong. I mean, it doesn't, but I find that there is kind of a constricting aspect to working on a tablet. Not only what you were talking about, of trying to teach students to have scale, to think outside of just the scale of their own body, their own reach, but to think, how big can it be, right?
Yeah.
I have always been a person, I like to work in a smaller scale. I've loved that. I always loved that. So I get the idea that the digital sketchbook can still give me that. But in terms of trying to learn how to draw, there has to be a time in my instruction. and as a teacher, both and as a student, where I have to have that kind of scale.
Yeah.
I teach a kind of drawing too that has 4 different ways of drawing. And like you, one of them is gestural. And you can't do that here unless you've done it here. You
Yeah.
can't really get that whole body feeling. And this is one of the things that concerns me about digital is it's taking away the actual and saying that it has to be the virtual, and it's more and more constricting. Now, having said all of that, in my sketchbook, so much of it looks like this.
Wow.
You know,
I
it's
love
these
that.
thumbnail drawings, and they are, nobody needs to look at these, right? I'm not showing these, they're an artwork, right? But
There's so much going on, but yet there's so, like, for you knowing your end result, there's so few lines, which is really mesmerizing to me to think that in such few lines you can understand how that's going to become this larger than life, super detailed piece.
well, thanks. I mean, and two, there's this issue. The thumbnails are the experiments we were talking about last week, the happy mistakes, right? I'm trying
Yeah.
to figure out how I'm going to show the editor what the character I want to be in the book is going to look like. So I do that first, which becomes this.
Wow. And to have those within the same book so you can flip from one to the other, we can do that on the screen, but a lot of times because we're limited to space, unless you have a really big, desktop monitor, you're having to reduce the size of this one to open this one. And, or if you want them all there, now they're all small. And where for you to just be able to like that is a really cool feeling.
Yeah, and so one more. So here is a character page, a bunch of characters. I think I showed this a couple of weeks ago. But what it does for me is then I turn the page and I keep developing those characters individually. So there's another one, and
Yeah.
then here's another one, right? And all of
Right.
those guys are in this book. So that is what we're coming to the end of the time here. Actually, we've passed the end. But you see, to me, that's one of the things, the difference between two. Um, some people may be satisfied with the fact that they have their tablet, right? And I have mine right down here, and that's where their artwork will always be,
Yeah.
right? Maybe it'll get printed really big, but the origins, the file are in this thing, right?
Right.
You have the original hanging behind you, and it is a
Yeah.
tactile thing that has value. If this
Yeah.
ever
And I
is,
have, oh, go ahead.
well, I mean, if this tablet ever gets lost or these files get destroyed, well, that's not a good enough. And why am I trying to argue with anybody? Go ahead and do the digital stuff. It's all good.
Well, you have to do the digital. I think the thing I'm trying to do is push my students more digitally, which I'm finding fascinating because I thought that that's not a big point of contention, but I'm finding that I literally have to be more supportive and almost like, hey, why don't you get that digital tool out and let's do it in digitally as well as the tactile stuff. So yeah, so it's been interesting to see that grow and transform. I think now with the accessibility of iPads that you draw right on and you get the pressure sensitive, as opposed to before we were working on a tablet and then the screen's over here and you're blah, 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 and that's so different than when you're just working right on the. So I think now that people have those and they're a little bit more affordable, you're going to see more people gravitating towards that.
Yeah,
That's my final remarks.
yeah. And I think too that they're not going to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
But for many years, it was, oh, we're good. This is all going to be digital. Why are you even drawing on paper anymore? Right. So I
Right.
heard that from the students at College for Creative Studies. It's like, oh, it's so fascinating that you think that you should keep on drawing on paper. And I'm like, I'm not going to stop. So it's going to keep on keeping on, but it is fascinating to hear. And I did hear one person who was a mentor of mine say once, Matt, just stick around. because all of this digital stuff is going to become tiresome.
Wow.
And people are going to
Well,
want to know, how do you actually mix paint?
yeah. Yeah. And I think we're finding that. I think we're at that point now where we're seeing that the tactile materials are not going away, and that they're still necessary and valid. And therefore, there's more of a way now to think about them working hand in hand. I love seeing the students on their own accord take things that they did physically, scan them in, and then add some digital to that,
Yes.
more of a tradigital focus. And so that's really exciting too, to see that, that way you understand that they see it in that way and not separate.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
it.
we've gone way over time.
Whoop. That's what
Yeah,
we're here for, folks.
Yeah, because we're having fun, for crying out loud. Don't have fun. Okay, we need to remind people, our course is coming up the last 2 weeks of March. Check out the info, down there
Yeah.
in the blurb.
In the description.
Yeah, go to the link and it'll show you how to sign up. It's going to be 4 classes, 4 2-hour classes, a Friday afternoon and a Saturday afternoon, and then the next week. And it's creature and character creation. It's going to be a lot of fun, so check that out. And also, Eugene just made a new credits thing for the beginning and the end. So way to go, Eugene. We now no
Yay.
longer have to sing the Brady Bunch theme song in order to
Although, if you are a viewer and you want us to sing something,
yes,
just send us a message with that suggestion. I'm sure we can work it in.
Yeah, and I think that we can still sing songs at the end. I'm going to sing a theme song at the end of this one, and I hope you all join in. Yeah.
All right.
Are you ready to go? Are we done?
Yeah, we're ready. Let's
okay, so we're ending now. Making the way in the world today takes everything you've got.
When you want to fill your sketchbook, it takes everything you got.
Wouldn't you like to have a sketchbook?
All you have to do is find an iPad and draw, or get your sketchbook and throw some charcoal in there.
Yeah. Here, drawing stuff all day long, having fun, and because just what the heck. And okay, we'll end now.
Wait, we got to finish it. It goes like this. And when you get really good, everybody knows your name, Matt Faulkner.
Eugene Clark.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Peace out.
Save world, make art.